The man I am about to tell you about was once seen as the perfect image of success. His name was David, a wealthy businessman who built his fortune with sheer determination and long nights at the office. His calendar was always full, his phone always buzzing, and his mind always drifting toward the next deal. For David, every day felt like a race against time, and he believed winning that race meant providing the best life possible for his family. But in that race, he slowly forgot what truly mattered. At first, his absences seemed forgivable. A late meeting here, a missed dinner there. His wife would reassure their daughter that her father was working hard for their future. David often repeated to himself that he was doing it all for them, that every contract signed and every hour spent away from home was an act of love. Yet, those explanations could not fill the empty chair at the dinner table. His daughter, Emily, was 12 and still at that tender age when children crave attention and warmth. She would often wait for him, setting aside a drawing she wanted to show, or saving a story from her day just to hear his reaction. But many nights ended with disappointment as David arrived home long after she was asleep, kissing her forehead softly in the dark while telling himself tomorrow would be different. Business dinners replaced family meals. Boardrooms became more familiar than his own living room. And soon David's world revolved around numbers, deadlines, and profits. He tried to convince himself that material gifts could make up for the moments he missed. Whenever guilt tugged at his heart, he returned home with toys, gadgets, or clothes. Emily would smile politely, but her eyes never lit up the way they once did when he simply sat beside her and listened. David did not notice at first, but the distance was already growing. What he thought of as love expressed through sacrifice began to feel, to his daughter, like absence disguised as care. Still, David pushed forward, blinded by ambition. In his heart, he wanted nothing more than to give Emily the best life. Yet he did not realize that what she needed most could never be bought. The weight of his choices was slowly building, like invisible walls between father and daughter. He believed there would always be time later to make things right. Later to share those meals. Later to listen to her stories. But later has a way of running away when we're not looking. The changes in Emily were quiet at first, so subtle that David barely noticed. She no longer waited at the window for the sound of his car pulling into the driveway. She stopped leaving her drawings on his desk, and the stories she once saved for him, she now shared with her mother or kept to herself. When he did arrive home early, he found her door often closed, a soft glow of a lamp behind it, a sign that she was already living in a world where he was no longer needed. David tried to bridge the gap the only way he knew how, by buying more. He brought her expensive headphones, the newest phone, and even promised a trip abroad. Emily accepted these gifts with a polite thank you, but her smile felt thinner each time. She was growing, not just in age but in distance. She no longer rushed to his arms when he walked through the door. Instead, she carried an air of disappointment, though she never put it into words. One evening, David came home earlier than usual. He expected to find Emily watching television or playing in the living room. Instead, he found her at the dining table, her head resting on folded arms beside a plate of food gone cold. The sight stopped him in his tracks. His wife whispered that she had insisted Emily eat, but the little girl had refused, saying she wanted to wait for her father. Now she had fallen asleep in that waiting. David stood there in silence, his chest heavy with a guilt he could not swallow. In that moment, all the late nights, all the deals, all the reasons he thought were so important seemed to shrink in comparison to the sight of his daughter asleep at the table, clinging to a hope that he would come home. He wanted to wake her, to tell her how sorry he was, but his own voice felt trapped in his throat. The next morning, Emily barely looked at him. She picked at her breakfast, her eyes distant, her responses short. For the first time, David felt as though he had lost something he could not buy back. Money, the tool he had relied on to fix every problem, could not rebuild the trust that was quietly slipping away. He began to realize that success had become a wall, keeping him out of the very life he had worked so hard to provide. And behind that wall stood Emily, slowly learning to live without him. The truth finally struck David one evening when he returned home earlier than usual, determined to make amends. He imagined Emily's face lighting up at his presence, but when he walked through the door, she barely looked up from her homework. He asked if she wanted to have dinner together, but she quietly replied that she had already eaten. The distance between them was no longer silence. It was absence woven into the fabric of their relationship. David sat alone at the dinner table, staring at the empty chair across from him. For years he had filled that chair with excuses, with promises of tomorrow, with the illusion that wealth could substitute for presence. Now it stood as a reminder of what he had sacrificed in the name of success. He thought of the countless evenings he had traded away, the stories he'd never heard, the laughter he had missed. Each memory felt like a coin slipping through his fingers, impossible to retrieve. The realization hit him with a weight greater than any business failure he had ever endured. He had been building an empire, while losing the only treasure that truly mattered. Emily didn't want his gifts, his trips, or his promises. She only wanted him, his time, his attention, his presence. And those were the very things he had withheld. That night, David made a choice. He cleared his schedule for the week, cancelled meetings, and even upset a few partners. For the first time in years, he put family above business. He asked Emily if she wanted to go for ice cream after school. At first, she hesitated, unsure if she could trust his sudden interest. But then, with cautious hope, she agreed. It wasn't an instant repair. Emily's laughter did not return overnight, and the closeness they once shared could not be rebuilt in a single week. But David remained steady. Slowly, through dinners together, walks in the park, and late-night talks, a small bridge began to form between them again. Still, in his heart, David carried the sorrow of the moments forever lost. No amount of success could rewind the years or replace the nights she had waited in vain. Yet he also carried a newfound wisdom and understanding that true wealth was not found in bank accounts, but in the fleeting, priceless hours spent with loved ones. David would always be a successful businessman, but from that day forward, he chose to measure his life by dinners shared, laughter echoed, and memories made. Because in the end, he finally understood. Family time is worth more than money. Life often tempts us to measure our worth by what we earn, but the richest moments are never found in contracts or paychecks. They are found at dinner tables, in conversations, in the quiet presence we share with the people we love. David's story is a gentle reminder that while money may buy comfort, only time creates connection. The greatest legacy we can leave is not wealth, but love. Cherish your family today, for tomorrow is never guaranteed. If this story touched you, please like, share, and subscribe to Mindset Tales to reflect on more life-changing lessons.